Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Hello, welcome to LinkedUp Breaking Boundaries again. So for those of you who don't know, or just as a reminder, we offer choice boards. So in the past, what are we, Jerri, 108 episodes now, 110?
Yes, that's it.
We have looked at, taken a retrospective look and divided up all of our podcasts into themes. And then we have these as choice boards. And for every 3 that you listen to, you get free CEU credit. You just fill out a form and it's wonderful. And our themes are building relationships, collaboration, critical thinking, cultural responsiveness, ed challenges, social emotional learning, and student engagement. And what I think is so interesting about today's podcast is I don't think we're going to be able to decide where this one fits because it sort of fits into all of them, I think, just about all. But we have met these fantastic guests today. Another connection from South by Southwest EDU. That was a treasure trove, wasn't it, Jerri? Getting to go there.
Great. Well, it was interesting because we met a couple of them at Carl Hooker's bar.
Yeah.
Idle Hands. The night before.
Always cocktails, Jerri. Always
It's
cocktails.
always cocktails. There is a thing. We need to have a cocktail choice board.
That's right.
Yes. But then, so the next day, well, they said that they were doing a session. So I thought, oh, I'll look that up. But then I saw this session and it was called Find Flow and Let Go, Visual SEL Tools to Get Unstuck. I didn't even read who it was. And I thought, I've got to go to that. So I went early. Thank goodness. I'm sitting in the hall and there is a line back down. People are trying to get in and it is so full and crowded. Walked in, sat down and said, oh my gosh, it's you all.
You saved a seat for me.
Yes, I did save a seat for you and we snuck you in, even though there were people just lined up out the door trying to get into this session. So I think it speaks volumes about the work that you're doing, especially at South by Southwest, because there's so many sessions people would want to go to, but you had a huge crowd trying to get in to see you all. So without further ado, we would like to introduce our guests. And I thought it would be best if we just had each one introduce yourself and kind of tell us what your background is a little bit and what you're doing. So can we start with Manuel?
Oh man, I get to go first. Well, hello, my name is Manuel Herrera. I'm a former educator, so I spent 20 years in education, classroom teacher, and then kind of weave my way through various ed tech roles in leadership. And I've kind of left the classroom in the school districts, and I now work. My full-time job is at Washington University here in St. Louis, and I'm a learning and development specialist. And in addition to that, I do consulting work with Canva. So that is a lot of fun. I get to create designs and work with teachers in the classroom still. So yeah, that's kind of a quick background. And then I'm also an illustrator and designer. So I do a lot of that work as well.
I forgot that we are Midwesterners. I'm in Kansas, you're in Missouri. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yes.
I'm originally from Wisconsin, for what it's worth. Go Midwest.
Oh, yeah. Goodness. Well, Ela, go ahead.
Okay, well, I took the opposite trajectory of Manuel. So I started, my background is in actually engineering and design from MIT and from IDEO, which is a design firm that kind of helped start what's known as design thinking. So about 20 years between those two places. And then, but the whole time education was my kind of side project. And then, wherever I could, I was started teaching at Olin College, where I still teach. I'm kind of an innovative little school outside Boston. And then I had kids and there was no time for side projects. So I left that work in the design world and just came out to see what I and design thinking could, how we could help. And found myself going on a mission to try to make our best ways of getting unstuck accessible for every person and moment. That's the mission statement of innovatorscompass.org, of which I'm the founder, and that's my work.
Oh, that's great. What a rich background. IDEO, and I visited there and it was amazing. So I can't imagine how much fun you had there.
And I think one of our former guests, Jessica Artiles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Design thinker extraordinaire. Yes, we've had her.
I am not from the Midwest whatsoever, but I am on the East Coast,
Coast
in
girl.
Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I work currently in the Norton Public Schools, working with secondary education students. And I'm also a virtual practicum instructor for Emerson College online graduate program known as Speech at Emerson. And in my spare time, I also do some work with the MassQ, Massachusetts Computer Using Educators organization, where I'm a board member and lead of the conference committee. So I am busy and often wearing different hats to fulfill the different roles that I serve. My work during the day is with students who demonstrate very diverse learning styles and may have some differences in communication abilities. And so oftentimes I'm looking for ways to provide equitable access and voice, participation in the learning process and in the community in which they sit. And to that end is where the compass, the Innovators Compass, comes into play, as well as some of the visual communication and visual thinking abilities and skills and strategies that Manuel talks about. So, together it's sort of a perfect storm, and it provides a wonderful way to support our learners as well as our educators in better ways forward.
So if we look at the three of you as this triad team, call out what your expertise is, and then we'll be able to tie this together from there. So Manuel, what is your thing?
Sketching, visual thinking, kind of taking ideas and thoughts and kind of creating those as simple sketches.
Okay. Ela.
Taking different ways of getting unstuck, from like design to leadership to parenting, and trying to boil them down to a simple thing that people can access in any moment.
Okay. And then those two things help with what your expertise is, Kim.
Yes, communication, social emotional learning, as well as critical thinking and collaboration skills for life, basically.
Wonderful. So how did the three of you get together? What was your mission? I think, the root cause, I think, is what you represent, Kim. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, I think that is probably the most central channel outward to the universe, that in the ways that we like to do our work and hope to have an impact, to develop skills, strategies, and empowerment in the people in front of us in classrooms, who will then go on to become the leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you've done a lot of work with social emotional learning, and you are in the schools. I love that, because you bring that component to your team too. So what are you seeing as far as social emotional learning? What are the needs? And how is your team helping with that?
So yes, there are a lot of needs in the realm of social emotional learning, just in general as a developmental process. It's not something that all of us are born with, but we all are capable of learning our social emotional skills and abilities, as well as strategies. And so, when I think about that as a developmental process, and then I also think of the layer of the pandemic and the impact that has had on our developing students, the needs are wide and deep, much variability. And so the need to provide flexible frameworks to work with, in terms of, having tools and resources available at scale for teams across districts, across grade levels, across programs, et cetera, is very high. And so the ways that we can support that is to identify strategies and tools such as the Innovators Compass and visual thinking, and alternatives for that avenue of student choice and voice to be available and user driven. Taking opportunities when students are younger to show them empowerment and what that can feel like and how that can be for them is very powerful. It has staying power and a ripple effect that can carry on through the years of their, pre-K to 12 education and beyond.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Jerri.
There we go. Sorry. This is so powerful, because educators talk a lot about social emotional learning, but then they kind of throw their hands up and say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. How do I tackle this? I want to help. And what you're creating are actual tools and strategies that empower not only students, but teachers, adults. And I think that is so valuable, to hand somebody a tool that they can use for
The beauty
of their life.
The beauty of the Innovators Compass is that it exists in many forms and can be modified to suit whomever you're sitting with at the time. And I've been known to do that.
Right.
And I talked to Ela and Manuel about the ways that I sometimes, even take a pair of scissors to a compass that's a beautiful piece of paper, and I cut it into pieces so that I can give the different sections to the students in front of me in a way that is, broken down into manageable steps that can come back together as a whole for discussion and collaboration. So having those tools and being able to modify according to the needs in front of you at the time is extremely helpful.
So this Innovators Compass, I want to see it. I know from your session is this wonderful, I'm going to call it a support system, I think. I don't know. You guys can probably explain that a little better. But how did it begin? How did you get connected to build this? We know that it supports SEL. We know that visual thinking comes into play. But how did it get started?
Well, I've had the opportunity, the privilege to work with just a lot of different ways of making things better. My depth is in design thinking and engineering design, but then I've had the, let's say, opportunity or need to work with people who do anything from like community organizing to leadership development to parenting, and just kind of felt like all of those things were kind of starting to say some of the same things to me. Like, I think they're giving us the same advice, and yet it's not accessible to every person moment. And so not everybody has the chance to learn all these different things. And even if they do, I'm a parent too. So at 2:00 in the morning, all the parenting, design thinking, human-centered, empathic design, and all the stuff would go out, the window. It's like it's yelling back at them. And so that just became a mission to try to figure out, I think they're saying the same thing. What if we can just make that? What if we can just say it? Let's just call it. What are they all telling us in a way that people. Yeah. So Kim has just brought it up on her screen, and that's where we wound up. I started with, if you go this slide before it, I have it up on mine as well. But with all of these different ways of making things better, design thinking, adaptive leadership, systems thinking, nonviolent communication, and all these different things that I've gotten a chance to learn, and just I think they're saying the same thing. If you map out their steps, it turns out there is in fact a pattern. They are actually telling us the same things at some level. After experimenting everywhere from preschool classrooms to global conference rooms and kind of everywhere in between, we wound up with what is Innovators Compass, 5 questions that move us forward that are kind of the same, the kind of core, the heart of all these things that we might learn to make things better. And honestly, the way that little kids and any of us get unstuck when we're making things better. So you can go to the next slide, which is
get unstuck. Sometimes I call it in my own world failure to launch, right? You kind of what you need to do to get there, and then sometimes you get in your own way, or sometimes you just procrastinate, or sometimes you have fear and you don't know how to move forward. So this tool helps with all of those situations. Is that right? It provides these guiding questions. It looks like where do you usually start? It's ideas, principles, observations, and experiments.
Yeah, so there are.
I see. One is people. Oh, I see. Never mind. It's number. Okay.
Numbers on it. I like to think of it as a compass, not a map, but the numbers are the way that if you do learn any of these formal processes for making things better, they will generally follow the numbers. And I think the reason they keep asking the same questions is because these are the ways we get stuck. And fear is a big one. So the first one is seeing people in new ways, seeing who's involved in new ways. When we, we go at it alone or we try to solve it by ourselves and not exclude the people who are involved. So that's the first and center that really kind of applies to everything else. And then we can get stuck not seeing what's happening and why. And so that's the second question: what's happening and why? Seeing that in new ways, or gaining new observations to go on. Real details. This is a compass, so that's the bottom of the compass is details. And then we can get stuck, overwhelmed by everything that's going on. So that we need to be able to zoom out and see the big picture of what matters most. The second question, or
that one, what matters most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like our guiding star, the thing that we see. Otherwise it's just overwhelming. We have to have somewhere to focus that's going to be powerful.
Yes.
Get stuck having no ways or just one way to do what matters most. And so we need to be able to see again the big picture of all the different ways, or at least more than one different way that we may be able to do that, more than one ideas. And they can be fluffy blue sky cloud ideas. They don't have to have details yet, but at some point you can get stuck with those, and you do need to at some point be able to get back down to details and have a real concrete step to try some kind of experiment to that will probably fail, but it's a real thing. It has a who, what, when, where, how, and you do it because that's the only way to actually see again what happens and why for the people involved. And so,
well, as you were doing that, I was playing in my mind something that I was stuck on a few weeks ago. And as we went through it, when we got to the what matters most, that changed the whole trajectory of where I would have gone in the first place. Because I think my reptilian mind wanted to go one way, but when I think with my heart and what really matters most, that took me down a different path. That's powerful.
So my experience is that, and we should just hear what you just did, because there's really talking about any of this stuff is not nearly as good as doing it. I'll just say really briefly that in my experience, having done all these like fancy processes for making things better, they match these questions with, I'm going to hold this up where we have a slide in here too, but with these different ways, maybe you can find
remember that.
That's the other way. Yeah. With all our ways of all the tools that we have. So our ways of processing our head, our heart, our gut, our ways of interacting with the world, our eyes, our ears, our body, our hands, and then all the things we can use, words, pictures, and stuff around us. And pretty much any way I've seen of making things better is like getting us to explore new possibilities in one of these questions using more of these tools than just our head and our words, which we use. Humanual.
Critical.
And I love the visual element. I think that is so important. So, Manuel, can you speak to that and the importance of that and how that plays a role?
Yeah, so I guess with slide 11, we in the exercise, we were going to have people capture these ideas, and there's a variety of ways to do that. Everybody's comfortable in their own way, but obviously one is to just handwrite what your ideas are around those topics. But we also wanted to bring in ways you can use visual elements, and so we talk about emojis, we talk about pictures, sketches, and doodles. That's kind of the work that I do, and that's what's great about sketches is they're meant to be quick and simple. I know there is kind of definitely some anxiety when it comes to drawing. So part of the workshop is kind of easing some of that anxiety and kind of talking about, it's about ideas and not about kind of making it pretty or making it artistic. But there's several reasons why you want to do it this way, or you could at least try it this way. But when you're creating a drawing of an idea or a topic, you're kind of just dumping it all out on the page, right? And then at some point you can kind of organize that in some way. But we can oftentimes, if we're trying to logically explain it, we lose sight of just that brain dump. And so drawing allows you to let that happen. And in Kim's case, if you want to cut it up and then organize it that way, that's great. But it's just about getting those out first, because then that's when you'll start to notice maybe some patterns, or you'll start to notice some connections or lack thereof. You may notice that there's gaps or there's missing connections or missing links. It also is something that plays into your memory. So as you're trying to put some of these things into practice, research has shown that those images stay in your head. You're more likely to recall more of the information that you drew. So it's really where it comes into practice. Like, it's one thing to write it down, but do we actually kind of work towards those goals or using those strategies? And you can try to recall that with the drawing. Yeah, I mean, it's again, part of the workshop is to kind of ease the anxiety around drawing. That's hard. It's easy for us to say, or for me to say, like, yeah, just draw it, just draw the ideas out. But there is some comfort that has to happen first, and you kind of ease into that.
My daughter is a freshman. Well, now she's a rising sophomore at Georgia Tech in the industrial design program. But she's not. She took some art classes in high school, but she's not a illustrator. She doesn't do that well. So she was kind of stuck on that. And but I actually showed her some of your techniques, and that definitely helped. And she also has a drawing class too that just, again, just eases you in. You don't have to have these intricate drawings to express yourself, right? Especially to exemplify your ideas. Actually, the simpler the better, I would think. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's kind of, it's kind of a mindset that you do have to break when you're using drawing in this way. It's not artistic, it's not technical. It's definitely not, something that when you're designing anything, you're just trying to express an idea using some kind of visual image. And that takes practice. If I'm going to write it, especially when it comes to creating something that's maybe very abstract, or it's an idea. I'm not drawing a tree or a car or a person. So you definitely kind of it's something you definitely have to practice, but it's for you. It's not really for anybody else, unless you want to share that. But yeah, it's just about getting those on paper, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody processes information that way, and that's something, we ask that you do what's best for you. That's why we also provide the other ways of doing that, whether it's an emoji, whether it's using pictures, scales and meters, and we talk, a little bit about using a digital version of some of these. Not doesn't have to be drawn. I'm a big fan of mind maps and storyboards when it comes to that, because that's where I notice gaps in things that I'm trying to accomplish. Especially when it comes to the Innovators Compass, you're looking for solutions and ways to get unstuck that in the moment you may not understand it, but when you see it laid out, maybe in a sequential order or as ideas are connected, you might identify those things, and it'll be something so simple.
Yeah.
And this kind of ties into sketchnoting too, like people taking notes through sketches and designs. And I've read a lot of research that people that just type notes on a computer, they don't remember things as well as people that write it down or sketch note. There really is a significant reason to do that. And also, if you can make basic shapes, you can pretty much make anything.
Yeah, that's usually where I start when I show people how to do something like sketchnoting or drawing. It's just simplicity. If you can
Right.
draw, basic shapes, you can combine those shapes to make larger images. And again, they're for yourself. So I do have I will say I have a love-hate with sketchnoting sometimes, because we can, look that up and see things that are very beautifully done,
Yes.
which can be intimidating for someone if you're asking them to do kind
Right.
of use that concept or use that strategy. So it's a fine line to walk in how you explain it and what you share with folks, because it's really supposed to be about yourself. It's supposed to be about you and what you're trying to capture, what you're trying to work through, problem solve. And you may not want to display that with everyone, so it's okay to draw stick figures.
Right. So these are the tools. These are the fabulous tools to get unstuck. Kim, can you share some practical examples of how it's used in the classroom or with students in general?
Yes, there's so many ways in which to use this, both in and outside of the classroom with students, just by its nature alone. The way that the compass and the use of visual thinking and using drawing as a tool for jotting down thoughts, organizing thoughts, processing, and then determining a way forward for expression. One way that I've used this in classrooms has been in connection with literature in various different classrooms of students of different abilities and levels. We'll be unpacking a particular story or novel, and we can look at some of the conflicts or challenges happening within the novel itself and break down what is happening, who's involved, what's happened and why, what are the feelings attached to that. What are the details there? What matters most? What is the bigger picture? How did the characters deal with the conflict? And then here's where we can even push and lean into that flexibility of thought a little bit more and come up with some alternatives. What might have been some other ideas or other experiments to try? Or, okay, that mattered most to one character, but what else could have mattered most to a different character? So perspective taking. So being able to use the compass as well as visual thinking in classrooms to unpack literary experiences, to break things down into more manageable chunks and make them more sort of internalized to self and one's own learning can happen very easily when we use these tools together. Another way, I have like, I could just keep pulling out of my bag of, experiences and ways that I've used this, but one other way, when I'm thinking about using something that we learn about in school and taking it forward with us beyond the four walls, is the social problem solving, right? So I work a lot with students on social communication and navigating social challenges. And so in one case, I was working with a student who had some goals on self-advocacy, self-empowerment, and self-determination. She was heading toward college and jobs and things of that nature. So often was the experience that we would have the best laid plans, and then things might come up that would be obstacles to achieving the outcome desired. And so we would take the compass and we would take visual thinking, whether in the form of drawing or using images, or even a map, a mind map, or potential storyboard. And we would unpack sort of like, what did happen? What would we change? How would we change that? Going through all of the 5 questions. In particular, this one student that I'm thinking of had a social engagement. She wanted to go watch her boyfriend in a wrestling match. And the actual match was happening beyond the town that she lived in a different high school. She would need to drive there. She would need to enter the establishment alone, didn't know anybody else going. And then to sit in a gymnasium full of people she doesn't know was an overwhelming idea. She did initiate it. She did many of the steps to get to the outcome desired. And kind of like in the middle, when she had arrived and was sort of in the space and waiting for the match to start, a feeling overcame her and she decided that she needed to go. She needed to leave. And so she did. But then she got to her car and she had the compass there. She had Ella has these beautiful stickers that can be placed anywhere.
So the compass is on a sticker. Yes, I remember. That's
the visual, right? So we're back to that visual importance of reminding us to use our tools and strategies and to break things down into smaller pieces that we can think through and be flexible with and find better ways forward. So the compass being there was a visual reminder to the student. She remained in the car. She worked through the elements of the compass that she had become familiar with in our work in school. And she ultimately got back out of the car and walked back in the building, went back into the gymnasium, and she enjoyed watching that wrestling match that her boyfriend was in. And so to me, that is a really impactful story and an impactful example of how you can use the compass and visual thinking within the 4 walls of a school, reaching toward application and transfer beyond the 4 walls and in meaningful, relevant parts of life.
I mean, that's so important. I mean, think about when we do breathing exercises, right? For mindful, for, meditation, for mindfulness. And we don't do it just for that time. We do it to practice it over and over so that we can put it into practice in real world situations where we need to regroup. And this is exactly the same thing, I think. That's fabulous.
Yes. The work we do hope has impact that is long lasting. And so in this way, the compass and visual thinking, having options for thinking and options for expression and options for action, really do pave the path for that.
Yeah.
And this compass can be used with kindergartners through adults. Is that correct?
All ages. Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Ella. So we can use the compass with students of all ages, from pre-K all the way, to adulthood. And the way that you use it will, of course, vary according to who's in front of you. But you can see in this particular slide, there's a student there who was using drawing with the different elements of the compass cut into different pieces. We've laminated them so the dry erase marker can be used for easy, revising and making shifts or reusing. And here is, she's identified who's involved with a particular problem, what's happening and why, and went through the whole entire process. I have other students who will do the same, but you might see that their work is in, text form or text plus visuals or images from Google. And so it can be used, across the ages and stages. I would even say, I've used it with colleagues in the building when we're doing consultation on students with more than one area of need. Maybe there's a need for a special educator, a speech pathologist, an OT, maybe a PT, an ABA therapist. And maybe because, we're a district and we're all spread out, we're in different buildings, we can use the digital compass as a means for communicating on particular questions or challenges and collaborate visually, but also hop on a Google Meet and have a visual structure there for us to all collaborate and be heard and share ideas. So that's an example of using it with the adult humans in the room.
I like your point that you just made. It can be used collaboratively and can be used as a tool to make sure that everyone is seen, heard, and valued that way, because it's a guide in that process there. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And if people go and go through the South by presentation, like the slides, there's just the following pictures here are just visual examples of people doing that sort of.
Oh, and there's a sticker in the car.
Here's the sticker.
Yes.
There's a picture of that. The next slide is a picture of just all the different visual ways people have proposed, including those postcards that are now on the website. People, educators like Kim are like, if I had something like
printing them off.
There you go.
Card, then I was like, let's make these postcards. So these are all different ways that people have suggested. And then you can just see kids of all ages, like the one above that, like slide 20, I think you went through it already, like kindergartners, right? Barely literate yet. And they're using
Look at that.
Right. And this
the compass.
Yes. This is where because we have that from so little, right? Those visual tools. So not to forget those, but then as you go further, you see like kids collaborating on their playground problems, by far the most common compass topic.
Wow.
Playground problems and experimenting to try and change their own sort of rules and tools on their playground. I think the next one is cafeteria problems, because there's problems there too.
Oh yes, that's a biggie.
See a bunch of students collaborating, just writing around one giant compass on that. And the next one is stickies on a big compass, and that's students who are trying to figure out how to study for the exam during COVID together. And then it goes on to students who are one of our favorite teachers, Valeria Rodriguez out in Florida, giving students again visually the chance to create like a visual sort of drawing compass of their experience during Hurricane Irma and after it. And then a chance to come together around a big one and share those experiences and how to kind of, ideas, ways to move forward and what they might try.
So I think about all the skills that are being built here.
So many skills. So many.
Critical thinking, collaboration. I mean, they're all the skills that we want everyone to have, right? And they're just building those, and they don't even realize they're doing it.
And then the format, of course, is, just like Manuel was saying, I am a visual learner. So this is all natural to me. When I was teaching, I used graphic organizers all the time. I would have leveraged this in so many different ways. And in middle school, I was a middle school teacher, and I can just imagine all the ways in science and math that I would have been able to use this. But also in, again, you can use it in the content area for sure. But then also it's, transference of those skills into their real life sticky situations. Yeah. Love it.
These are life, like students coaching each other in life problems in college are being shown.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Those are my compasses. I do a little one on a sticky note every day.
Well, and that's another beautiful thing about the compass is you don't need the printout. You need a napkin or a pen or just something that you can use to take the mental framework and help yourself through whatever the stuck might be at the time.
Right. So you can use it anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
It's just so practical. And I'm going to definitely share it with my daughter because it is a really great tool for design thinking for the things that she has to do, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Manuel, I wonder, have you ever used this in your line of work? And how?
I didn't actually use this in my line of work, but funny thing is I kind of used it as I was in between jobs. And kind of was a little vulnerable in our presentation and kind of shared, you know, how I did that. And, especially when it came down to kind of what's important to me. I think it's in that upper left-hand corner of it. In looking for a role, I really had to kind of ground myself in those. Otherwise, I was going to apply and look at jobs that really didn't fit things that I felt were important to me. And so kind of, again, drawing that out, leaving that in my mind as I continued to look, and then kind of creating a timeline for myself. I'm also not very like, I'm going to say this a lot, but I'm not very organized at times. So like, here's a great, this timeline just to organize like what I needed to do in order to kind of move forward. And for me, I needed that. And so even if that wasn't present in front of me, that mental image of that was, and so I knew what I needed to do. I think a lot of us are visual, maybe not necessarily in drawings, but I'm sure right now, if we were to recall our calendars are likely color coded. They're likely set up in a certain way. And, if you're looking at it from a week view, you might remember those events in a certain order because they are color coded, or even by a day. So I think some of us do operate that way. I just happen to use drawings as opposed to something digital, because that not muscle memory, but that, tactile part of it helps it to stick in my mind. So
yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Like tactile learners, that they learn best that way, and they like to do while listening and while reading things because it helps them remember better. So there's that combination of visual and tactile that is very, very powerful.
I wonder if
yeah, absolutely.
since we haven't actually gone through a real example, and if Manuel's still, he's no longer vulnerable because there's a wonderful story.
Yes.
I wonder if you would, but is it valuable to just like briefly talk through each one? So he used his story and visually explored each of these questions around the question of, so what's next?
Right.
So starting on, I think, slide 42 is people.
This was my stuck challenge. My people, I forgot who I had listed. Do I have it on the next slide? I think it was starting with kind of my family is kind of who was important to me and why I was doing the things I was doing. And then kind of processing my own emotions. So I went through a layoff. I went through kind of that experience and grounding myself, a little bit and not taking it personal. That was a great way for me to kind of work through that. I think it's, yeah. So that was an interesting process. I don't think without really thinking about it, was I able to really completely process some of those emotions and those feelings. And then it came to, I think it's 44 where I kind of draw, what I'm, what I was experiencing. So yeah, from a company doing layoffs, and then me kind of being bummed and kind of really sad about it and confused and like, was I not doing was our team not doing what we were supposed to be doing? Why did this happen to us? And then like, well, now I regret leaving education to take a different position. But there was optimism, a lot of optimism in that, because then, my network reached out and definitely offered support and guidance and, the things that I needed. But yeah, so that's kind of where, we talk about the meters, emojis and meters for what's happening and why. I used a battery at the end just to kind of, I was pretty low. It was kind of just low, like you have no energy. You're like, oh my gosh. And at the time of year, it was December, mid-December when this all happened. And you're exhausted from the year. You're about to take a break. And then right before you take this break, this happens. So, so these were the things that were important to me. So what matters most? I wanted a job that I knew wanted to be remote. I kind of experienced that. I wanted a job where I could grow. I wanted a job with a good culture, so that's kind of the rock hands. I wanted a job that was a good fit for my skills. I didn't want to apply for something just for the sake of applying. Traveling was okay. I was open to doing that, and benefits. I think that's my prescription card or my benefits card. And then also, I wanted to have flexible hours. Like that had worked for me. That was doing really well with my family, with my living situation. And so this is my timeline of all the things that I needed to do in order to kind of continue to push myself forward. Sometimes otherwise you just and then it's not always going to go to plan. This is why all the X's are there, all the lines. That's kind of how that went. And then again, this is just a better way of organizing what I needed to do. And again, I didn't have to have this in front of me after I drew it. I kind of just remembered.
Yeah. It was part
That
of it.
helped.
I think you made a really strong point. A lot of people don't know how to deal with their thoughts, their ideas, their emotions, and instead they react instead of respond. And I think this is a really great way to process your things that are happening in your world, in your mind, in your, in your body, and really be able to look at that holistically and make moves from there. Just kind of sit with it and understand it. And this is a perfect example of how that helps so much.
And again, we use drawing as this example. For some, it may be a digital version of this, and that's fine. That works as well.
But I like the value of just putting it on a napkin so you can use it wherever you are, whenever you need it. Ela, is there training that has to happen to use this?
No, that's the mission anyway. And I think my happy or when I get emails, like I've got one in my inbox now I have to answer, about like someone saying, I want to use this, with my science students or whatever. So the mission was something that, again, our best ways of getting Unstuck accessible for every person moment in a format that could pass from person to person without training. And so it took a lot of experimenting to get to thank you, Kim, she just put the compass back up. And so it's those 5 questions, which was that accessibility piece, which was kind of where I got to. I use South by Southwest actually as my goal every year. And so what you see here as this compass, this graphic kind of landed by first South by 2018. And it's not just accessible, but powerful and accessible. So the thing that I encourage people to do is if they have one of these stickers or the visual in any way, the biggest message is just ask these questions more often in any way you can. Who's involved? What's happening and why? What matters most? What ways are there? What's the step to try? As a compass, not a map. You don't always need all of them. You don't have to go in that order. You totally are going to bounce around, right? Right now, I just need another way forward. Divine, like look for another idea. But the add to just the questions is there's a lot baked into this very simple picture, which was where the power comes from. So the compass itself, the bottom is details, the top is big picture. And what makes really powerful observations is, when you see what's happening and why, real details, not just, that's what it says, just follow what's on here. I'm not saying anything that's not on here. Real details, right? When you generalize, Kim's always late to all her classes. No, she's not. She's late to some and not others. And then we can look at why, look at the real details. Oh, because she has a really long distance from this one to the other. That's when it's useful. Experiments too, stay fluffy ideas unless they have real details. Who, what, when, where, how. So that's the compass on here. And then when you're at the top, right, when you're trying to see what matters most, you need to zoom way out of the weeds. Like, look, whoop, deep breath, way out, big picture, what really matters most here. Same thing for ideas. If you want to see lots of ways, if you're like, if all of your ideas are in this like little tiny space, like zoom way out, all of your ideas are kind of in your neighborhood, and there's ideas that are as far away as Japan. They're completely different. So that's what the compass is doing on there. And then there's also little pictures in each space. So there's 2 people in the people part, and they have a little heart in them. Just remember that, like, if you do nothing else, if you have 2 seconds to do this, like, feelings really matter, right? Like, just how you feel and like how people need to feel, and everything else will be okay. And there's 2 picture frames in the observations, just like Manuel was getting at. There's like the upside and the downside of everything. So he's like, oh man, all this regret, all this pain. Oh, but there's also there's opportunity and optimism. So when we see new possibilities, basically these cues like help us find new possibilities, right? Like, let's look at the other side. And then there's a star for principles. Remember, what are these things that we start? What can be my guiding star no matter what I do? If I know kind of what matters most, the idea is everything else will come, right? Like, just if nothing else, right? And then there's the big fluffy cloud for ideas, because your ideas should be dreaming. Like, this is your chance to dream. That's what that space is for. If you don't now, you're never gonna. And then the experiments are no longer a cloud. They're like these hard blocks, right? They're like real things that you can feel and do. Like, they're real now. You're not just dreaming anymore. But they're falling over. My daughter was 4 years old. Those would fall over. So because they will probably fail at some point, and that's got to be okay. You'll just see what happens, and you'll learn, and you'll go from there. So that's what the pictures are for. It's all on the same card. So that doesn't require training. Just take a look at it and let those help you find new things. And I say the only other tools I really encourage people to use are exclamation points and question marks. So dump what you already use your period, but then try to find different possibilities. And the fastest way to new possibilities is to use question marks, to let go of the old ones. Like as a mom or a student or anyone, like this matters most is being perfect? Question mark, let that baby go and like surprise yourself. Maybe that doesn't matter most. Maybe there's something else that matters most. Or you can let out a crazy idea like I'll have 10,000 elephants at my birthday party if you just put a question mark on it, and then it's fine.
What I really love about that too, Ella, is the power of permission to have question marks. We have students who sometimes are driven by fitting inside the box, right? And checking the boxes and getting the state assessment passed and doing those things, thinking in those ways. The question marks and the exclamation points really encourage, again, that flexible thinking, that, outside of the box thinking, the creativity, the collaboration process, which is just super important and also really fun. Like learning should be fun. And so I think that the Compass elevates that idea to be able to, learn and have fun and gain perspective and be flexible and keep empathy in the middle of everything, the human-centered nature, right?
Yes.
Just because we don't see things the same way doesn't mean we can't have conversations. It just means we need to be ready to listen and also, participate and share, which is how everyone grows.
Yeah, exactly. And I like how you phrase it. First of all, it's really genius that, between the colors, the flow, the little images to help guide your thoughts, but also on the left, how we see anything we do when we're stuck, we're missing something. And that we're missing something part is great because it implies that you're going through this process to come out on the other side with a new revelation or something new. You're not just going through the motions of doing it, but you're going to discover something here. And that's going to move you along. So I like that implication there.
Just want to say I rarely use the word process. Like if the slide before it has like all these processes that inspired this, but this is, if you see those as big maps, this compass is like the little compass in the corner of all of those, right? That's not like all the steps you have to do this, then it's just the compass that they all share. They're all asking these questions. Some ask you to do it slowly, some ask you to start with, what matters most as opposed to what's happening. This is just a compass and you decide what you need, how fast to go. I think slide 59, we show like all the different.
It's flexible, it's dynamic, it's
different
to suit yourself. Yeah.
Right. Different people, different processes use it different ways. It's just these 5 questions and these pictures will help you kind of use them powerfully. And the only instruction on every single form of Innovators Compass is with and for everyone involved, explore new possibilities. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, like the with and for is just what it sounds like. Although it's actually really, really great to use it yourself first and explore new possibilities before you join other people, so that you get a chance to like get those periods out, dump your own thoughts, and then shake them up, right? Like go look for new possibilities and what's happening. Use a lot of question marks, like start to wonder, what is happening for them? So that when you get together with other people, then you've already explored and loosened up your own perspective so that you can really go and be present and listen to them and be open. And, but that's it. That's the only instruction. And so if you're, earnestly doing it with and for and exploring these 5 questions, that you have the seal of approval. Go.
Yeah, no, it's it's a gift, right? I really think this is a gift, and I'm looking forward to sharing this. We will definitely have, the website is innovatorscompass.org, and we will definitely have that in the show notes so everyone can have access to it. And we'll also make sure that we have your social media linked as well. I think you shared that with us. So I guess I know, Kim, I see you hang out with you on Twitter once in a while. I see you there. So you're pretty active there. Ella, are you as well on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. I'm not
Okay.
Kim.
We are going to be at ISTE as well, and Ella will be.
Nice. Oh, good.
Yeah. So there will be an opportunity to for a deeper dive on the Compass in the Learning in Disguise playground area, which will happen on Monday, June 26th between, I believe it's 3 and 5 p.m.
All right.
So yeah, for anyone listening who wants to stop by, that would be a really wonderful time to get some one-on-one time with Ella and some of the rest of us that will be in that same space.
Got to check out.
That's fantastic.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes,
We will look for you.
absolutely. We hope you stop by.
Oh, we will.
We will. We'll be there.
Yes.
But thank you all for joining us today and sharing this really fantastic support system and guide, compass, right? Compass for all to use. We appreciate you. And this was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.